Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel Arunodayam's Biology. Today we are going to learn how nutrition takes place in case of human beings from class 10 biology life processes chapter. Nutrition in case of human beings part 2. Already we have learned how nutrition takes place in mouth and stomach in our previous video, that is in part 1. Okay, now we are going to learn how nutrition takes place in case of small intestine and what happens to food in large intestine and how the waste material is produced here and how it will get rid of our body. Okay, let us start. So in our previous video we have learned food which we are taking into our mouth will get processed into small particles with the help of teeth, and carbohydrates present in the food gets digested with the help of salivary amylase present in the saliva. So food is partially digested here. That partially digested food along with saliva passes through this esophagus by peristaltic movement and enters into stomach. So it is an elastic pouch like structure. Here gastric juice is released which contains HCl to kill the germs and to activate some enzymes like pepsinogen into pepsin, and proteins are digested here. And here the food material which is partially digested now enters into next part of digestive tract called as duodenum. This U-shaped tube is called as a duodenum, which connects stomach with the small intestine. So here when the food enters into duodenum with the help of this sphincter, pyloric sphincter, already we have discussed the valve present between stomach and duodenum is called as pyloric valve, or it is also called as a sphincter. So when this sphincter opens by peristaltic movement, the partially digested food from stomach enters into this duodenum. Okay, and when the food is present in the duodenum, bile juice is released from liver. So this is a liver which is the largest digestive gland. This gland releases a juice called as bile juice, or it is also called as bile. This bile through this gallbladder enters into duodenum. Okay, and this leaf-shaped green color structure is called as pancreas. This pancreas releases pancreatic juice, and through this tube, that means pancreatic duct, the pancreatic juice again enters into this duodenum. So here we have in the duodenum partially digested food from stomach, bile juice from liver, and pancreatic juice from pancreas. So the food along with these juices now enters into the next part of our digestive tract called as a small intestine. Small intestine. Actually, small intestine is the longest part of our alimentary canal. So, alimentary canal contains so many organs. No, among all these organs, small intestine is the longest part. Actually, it is the longest part, but it can fit in compact space because of its coiling nature. This small intestine is arranged in the form of coiled structure, isn't it? Because of its coiling nature, it can fit in compact space. Small intestine is coiled in nature and fitted in a compact space. The length of small intestine differs from one animal to other animal actually. In case of herbivorous animals which depends on grass or plants, this small intestine is very long in them. The small intestine is very long in case of herbivorous animals. Why? Because herbivorous animals generally eat grass or plants, isn't it? Usually the cells contain cellulose substance. That means a complex carbohydrate is present in the form of cellulose in case of plants and grass. So this cellulose is digested with the help of an enzyme called as cellulase. It is a complex process actually. The digestion of a cellulose by cellulase is actually a complicated process. That's why it needs a very long time. So in case of herbivorous animals, their small intestine is very long just to digest cellulose. But in case of carnivorous animals like tiger, their small intestine is relatively smaller when compared to these herbivorous animals. Why? Because these carnivorous animals depends on meat, isn't it? So meat means they have proteins in them. So proteins are very easy to digest. That's why they have small intestine when compared to herbivorous animals. Now let us see how digestion takes place in case of a small intestine. Actually, small intestine is the site of complete digestion of carbohydrates, proteins and fats. So already we have seen that in case of mouth only carbohydrates are digested, isn't it? only carbohydrates are digested in mouth, whereas in stomach only proteins are digested. But small intestine is the site, is the place where complete digestion of food materials takes place. That means all the components of food we took, that means carbohydrates, proteins, fats, all these substances get digested. That means complete digestion takes place in a small intestine itself. Okay, actually the food from small intestine, sorry, the food from stomach entered into small intestine through duodenum, no, that means the food came into small intestine along with the bile juice and pancreatic juice. Okay, what is the purpose of these juices? Let us see. Usually the food coming from the stomach is acidic in nature. Why? Because stomach secretes HCl, isn't it? Because of hydrochloric acid, the food is acidic in nature. The food coming from stomach into small intestine is obviously acidic in nature, but in small intestine the food has to turn into alkaline. Otherwise, the enzymes cannot act on them. Enzymes present in the small intestine cannot act on food material which is coming from stomach. Why? Because it is acidic in nature. That's why the food turns into alkaline by the intestinal juice or succus entericus, which is secreted by small intestine. Usually the walls of small intestine releases or secretes a substance called as a releases some juice called as intestinal juice or succus entericus. Intestinal juice or succus entericus. This intestinal juice will convert the acidic nature of the food into alkaline. Then the enzymes will act on the food materials. So now the food has turned into alkaline. Now what happens here is bile juice. Actually, bile juice is the only juice in the digestive system which do not contain any enzymes for digestion. Actually, we have so many juices released. For example, here saliva is released which contains salivary amylase enzyme to digest carbohydrates. In case of stomach, gastric juice is released which contain pepsinogen enzyme to digest proteins. But here the liver releases some juice called as bile juice. No, this bile juice do not contain any enzymes for digestion. This bile juice contain bile salts and bile pigments. Bile salts and bile pigments. These bile salts help in breaking down the larger fat molecules into smaller ones. Actually, the food we take contains fat in the form of a large globules. Fat is present in the form of a large globules. If fat is present in the form of a large globules, enzymes cannot act on it. Enzymes cannot digest those fatty substances. So, in order to make them digest, these large fat globules has to convert into smaller substances. This is facilitated by this bile juice. So what bile juice will do is bile juice contain bile salts. These salts acts on larger fat globules present in the food into break them into smaller globules. This process is called as emulsification. So already in the 4th chapter maybe you have learnt the emulsifying action of soaps. So just like that, here also emulsification process takes place in which bile salts converts the larger fat molecules into smaller ones. Then on these smaller fat molecules, enzymes acts and digests them. Okay, next pancreas also releasing pancreatic juice. No, this pancreatic juice contains trypsin and lipase enzymes. Trypsin and lipase enzymes. Trypsin helps in the digestion of proteins into peptones. The trypsin acts on proteins present in the food material and digests them into peptones. Lipase acts on fats and converts them into fatty acids. Okay, trypsin and lipase are present. They convert proteins and fats respectively. Next, the walls of small intestine also releases some juice called as intestinal juice. No, this intestinal juice also contains some enzymes which completely converts the carbohydrates, proteins and fats present in the food material. That means the juice contain enzymes which converts proteins into amino acids, carbohydrates into glucose and fats into fatty acids and glycerol. So here with the help of enzymes, with the help of all these enzymes, complete digestion takes place in the small intestine. The food is completely digested here. Okay, complex food materials are completely digested into simpler substances. Now these simpler substances, that means this digested food has to enter into blood, and through the blood it has to be supplied to each and every cell present in our body. The inner walls of small intestine contains many finger-like projections called as villi. So inner walls of small intestine, throughout the wall of intestine we have some finger-like projections. These finger-like projections are called as villi, plural term. Villus is a singular term. So villi are present. These villi help in increasing the surface area of absorption. That means they can absorb more amount of digested food within small space. That means they are increasing the surface area for absorption. They are taking the digested food material present in the small intestine and supplies that to blood. Why? Because these villi are richly supplied with blood vessels. These villi are richly supplied with blood vessels, so the digested food which enters into villi obviously take their way into blood through the blood vessels, and from the blood they will pass on to different cells. So here the cells will use that food material for obtaining energy, or for building new materials like tissues or cells, or for repairing old tissues, whatever it may be. The cells will use that digested food for their needs. Okay, that is how digested food will enter into our blood and to the cells. Finally, undigested waste food materials are there. No, only some amount of food material is completely digested here and absorbed into blood, but still some undigested waste food materials will enter into large intestine. So the small intestine continues as a large intestine here. So the undigested food from a small intestine enters into large intestine, and here also in the large intestine food moves by peristaltic movement only. Of course in small intestine also food moves by peristalsis. So through peristaltic movement only the food, undigested food, moves from small intestine into large intestine. When the food is passing through this large intestine, if extra amount of water is present in that waste food material, it get absorbed into the walls of the large intestine. It get absorbed into the walls of the large intestine. If any minerals, useful minerals like iron or magnesium are present, they will also get absorbed through the walls of the large intestine into blood. So finally solid undigested waste food materials are produced in the large intestine, and they enter into this part called as a rectum, and they are temporarily stored here. Undigested waste solid food materials are stored in rectum for temporary purpose. So now these undigested waste food materials are called as bowels or stool or fecal matter. The last part of our digestive tract or alimentary canal is called as anus. Of course, this anus also contains some sphincters, that like means valves are present. When these valves open, these undigested waste fecal matter will get rid of our body. That process is called as a defecation. Defecation means removal of a fecal matter. Okay, that means bowels are released from the body. So this process takes when the anal sphincter opens. So that is how digestion of food material takes place in our body, and waste materials are get ridding of our body. So this is a nutrition in case of human beings. It starts when we take food into mouth. So with the help of teeth, it get processed into smaller particles, and saliva digests the carbohydrates present in it into dextrose and maltose with the help of salivary amylase. And by peristalsis, it moves through esophagus, enters into stomach. Proteins are digested here. Next enters into duodenum, joins bile juice and accompanies bile juice and pancreatic juice. Then it enters into small intestine. Here complete digestion of food material takes place and absorbed into blood through small finger-like projections called as villi. And next undigested food enters into large intestine. Here also water get absorbed, and finally solid feces are stored temporarily in rectum. Finally defecation takes place through anus. Okay, actually this is a brief explanation of human digestive system. But in case of our old syllabus, digestive system is detailed explanation was given actually in our old syllabus. If you want to have that detailed explanation, please go through my playlist in nutrition. I have explained the human digestive system in 4 parts there. If you have time, please go and watch it. But in our new CBSE syllabus, we have only brief explanation of it. Okay, that is about our topic. Hope you understand it. If you have any doubts, please ask me in comment section. I will clarify you. Thank you so much for watching. Jai Hind.